It's my pleasure to welcome you to the 2013 version of the annual Real Estate Trends and Strategies Conference, hosted by the Kelly A. Bergstrom Center for Real Estate Studies at the Warrington College of Business Administration at the University of Florida. I'm Wayne Archer, William D. Hussey Professor of the Warrington College of Business Administration, and I'm also Executive Director of the Bergstrom Center. This conference is the Center's signature effort to move real estate education beyond the halls of academia and into the world of business enterprise. And our goal is to bring together fresh and valuable information about current market trends, as well as thoughts about how to respond to today's opportunities and risks. The lineup of program events is one part of this effort, and your engagement is the other. And our goal is for the presentations from this platform to serve as a catalyst to encourage and facilitate your interaction with each other, sharing information, ideas, questions about your context and your opportunities. We've enjoyed a lot of great conferences in this short series, but we've never been more excited about the program before us and your response in joining us here as we are for this effort. Now, a lot of people have given generously, as you can guess, of their time, their thought, their energy, and their financial support to make this conference so extremely promising. And a little bit later, you'll get acquainted with the conference committee. I'd like to salute them. They've done a fabulous job, and many people have contributed. You'll hear their names shortly. But in addition, we have tremendous financial support for this program, and we want to recognize those who have brought that support to us. Our gold sponsors include Akerman Senterfitt, ARA, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, BB&T, Bergstrom Investment Management, Duke Realty, Panantoni Development, Ram Realty Services, Southeast Real Estate Business Magazine. Our reception sponsor is Covenant Capital Group, and our silver sponsors include East Group Properties, Flagler, Hallmark Partners, HFF, Highwood Properties, and Jones Lang LaSalle. Obviously, this conference could not happen without our wonderful advisory board. And representing them, I'm pleased to introduce their chair, Jim Stine.
Thank you, Wayne, and good afternoon, everybody, the few of you that are in here so far. It's my pleasure as the current advisory board chairman to welcome and thank each and every one of you for attending the 17th annual University of Florida Bergstrom Center for Real Estate Studies Trends and Strategies Conference. As Wayne mentioned, our conference committee has done a fantastic job this year putting together an agenda that is loaded with interesting speakers and presentations. And it's my hope that when you leave here tomorrow, you walk away with something of real tangible value. I'd like to acknowledge the members of the committee at this time and thank them for volunteering their time and energy to make this committee or this conference what we think it's going to be. And first and foremost, our committee chairman this year was John Crossman. And these last few weeks, John's been like a pit bull on the phone and calling people and harassing them to register and sending emails. And he set a goal at the beginning of his chairmanship to have 400 attendants this year, and I'm proud to say that at final count today we've got 420. So thank you, John, for a job well done. In addition to John, I'd like to just read off the names of the additional board members who have volunteered their time and energy. Barry Altschuler, John Barry, Daryl Carter, Jeff Kahn, Dick Donnellan, Danny Finkel, Carson Good, Michael Green, Doug Ermshire, Scott McLaren, Jim Mata, Rick Scarola, Elliot Throne, and Rachel Ween. And of course, none of this happens without the hard work and dedication of Tim Becker and Angela Betancourt of the Bergstrom Center. So if you would please, just a round of applause to congratulate them on the job well done. The University of Florida Center for Real Estate Studies was founded about 30 years ago and was named for Kelly Bergstrom in 2006. The center offers a master's degree that is earned over a period of 10 months. We've graduated over 1,000 students with an excess of 90% of them successfully achieving job placement. I can personally attest to the quality of the product that is produced here. I've hired a number of the students over the past 15 years, and I can tell you they make a great addition to any company, and they've all made tremendous contributions to the success of both RAM and Stiles Corporation. One of the attributes of the master's program that makes it attractive and valuable to the students is the 145-member advisory board that consists of professionals involved in the real estate industry who volunteer their time and make an annual membership payment to help support the facility. We have board members who reside in Alabama, California, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Maryland, Tennessee, and Texas. The board provides an invaluable source of education and a great networking opportunity for the students, and it's a great way for the board members to give back to the real estate industry. To all the current board members in attendance today, I offer my thanks for all that you do. And for those of you who are maybe here for the first time and are interested in learning how to become a board member, I'd ask that you seek out either Tim Becker, our director of the center, Steve Deutsch, who is this year's membership chair, or myself, to get information about how you too can become a board member. Again, I welcome you and thank you all for your attendance today. And next, I'd like to introduce Mark Tobin with Akerman Senterfitt. And Mark is going to come up here and introduce our first speaker and provide what should be an excellent and interesting interview. Thanks again, everybody.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the privilege of being included in such a high caliber conference. There's lots of conferences, but you need not look any further than the sponsors and attendees list to know that this is excellent and has quite a future. And thank you also to Tim Becker for being helpful in pulling this together. He's been tracking along with Stan Tate and I. We have a real treat today. Stanley Tate is, besides being 85 years old and a native Floridian in Florida for 85 years, very few people in the world, and this is a strong statement, in the world, have the business experience and perspective that he has with regard to business and the economy and banking and a lot of other things. Very few. Certainly in the US, there's very few. My family's had the privilege for years on a personal and business level of knowing the Tates, and I feel privileged to have grown up consistently watching the awesome things that Stanley Tate's done and looked up to it over time. So to me, it's an honor to be the person inviting him and sitting here and interviewing him, and I think we all should be thankful to the University of Florida for having this opportunity today. The big challenge is I feel like we're trying to put 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag in 50 minutes. So there's so much that we're going to be covering. And each one of the topics, if you think about it, could go off for a half hour. Very, very easily, it would be riveting, all of it. So we're just, please, I apologize in advance, Stanley and others for trying to move it along as best we can so we can all get the benefit of as much information as possible. A little bit about Stan Tate. By the way, there's a 5-page resume, and there's the 1 page. I chose the 1 page, even though the 5 page is fascinating. A Dade County native. Stanley Tate has been a lifelong Florida businessman and civic leader. He heads Tate Enterprises, which is an umbrella for various corporations and partnerships with interests in real estate development, construction, investments, condominium development, shopping centers, office buildings, restaurants throughout the United States, throughout the world. Mr. Tate is former mayor and member of the Bay Harbor Island City Council, former chairman of Metro-Dade County's Housing Oversight Committee. He was chairman of the Region 1 25 States Advisory Board to the Resolution Trust Corporation, appointed by President Bush, the first Bush, Herbert Walker Bush, to be chairman of the National Advisory Board to the RTC, and then nominated by President Clinton to be president of RTC. As you notice, it's bipartisan. Doesn't matter what the party affiliation, there's a uniform level of respect for Stan Tate. Stanley's largest and primary civic involvement has been his efforts in sponsoring Florida's prepaid college program. He served as chairman of the Florida Prepaid Post-Secondary Education Expense Board from '87 to '05. In '06, Governor Bush signed a bill unanimously enacted by the Florida legislature, changing the name of the Florida Prepaid College Program to the Stanley G. Tate Florida Prepaid College Program. The Florida Prepaid College Program is the largest prepaid college program in the United States with assets of over $10 billion. He served as vice chairman and a member of the Florida Judicial Qualifications Commission over 18 years. He's a member of Fannie Mae's National Housing Impact Advisory Council, served on the board of hospitals, and the civic involvement. I could go on forever, just I'm going to cut it short. Again, very few people have Stanley's experience. The best business move, I'll say, for Stanley was when he attended the University of Florida. I didn't know this till today. He was a professor. His wife now, since 1949, Johnny, was a student there, 17 years old. So the professor hits on his student, okay? That's what happens here, okay? And it was the first year that it was co-ed at the University of Florida, so he doesn't waste any time, okay? So he goes and he finds Johnny, which was his best business move, okay? Best, smartest move ever, all right? And he marries her. He's been married to her since 1949. She was 17 years old. With no further ado,
64 years.
Stanley Tate.
Want me to come up? Thank you. Thank you. I think I have a mic. Can everyone hear me?
Stanley, let's move it along. I've got so much to say. Let's share it, all right?
Okay.
What are the biggest challenges facing Florida real estate market over the short term and over the long term? If you had to pick the most heavy-duty challenges that we're facing, what would they be?
The most heavy-duty challenges are very easy to define because they have to do with challenges that have nothing to do specifically with real estate, but yet they're very much connected. It has to do with the national debt. If we don't get a control on the debt in this country is finished. People don't understand what a bankruptcy would do to the United States, and that's what we're facing. In the last 17 months, our debt increased $1.7 trillion. We are now at over $17 trillion. When I ran the Resolution Trust Corporation, it was the largest single expense of the United States government, other than a war. It was a 5-year program. I closed 1,940 banks. I put 940 bankers in jail. You never read about it in the newspaper because we never met with reporters. It wasn't meant to be the kind of a job to punish people. It was the kind of a job to put the banking industry back into a safe program, because the banking industry, as it relates to real estate and America in particular, is the backbone of America. Because America became a great country because of the free enterprise system. So the debt as it relates to the world today and as it relates to the United States is critical.
What about access to debt capital?
I think for the short term, there's going to be more capital available in this current year than we've had in the past, again, directly relating to what may occur on the debt issue. The debt issue is beyond anyone's understanding as to its importance and as to the future of America. If we don't get a control on the debt, and that means a reduction in spending, plain and simple, you cannot do it with taxes, and you can't do it in any other way. I don't care who can tell you otherwise. No true economist who knows the true value of dollars as they are reflected in the economy of the United States will tell you there's any other way to do it except to cut on expenses.
Isn't it a hybrid, though?
Yeah, well, it covers a variety of different things, but I could tell you that the expenses themselves are the key to cutting the debt. Because if we continue to increase the debt in excess of what our income is and what monies are available, there's just huge potential for failure. If America can't pay its debt, this country will be bankrupt. There isn't anyone in this room who can understand what a bankrupt America would mean. But I can tell you it'll be the end of everything that you now except for the manner in which you live. I can tell you, the debt has existed in other countries. It's never existed in America because we have the only system in the world which has tried a new economy. It's called the free enterprise system. What made America great is the free enterprise system. And it's just as simple as that. And if we change that system, which is in a variety of different attempts, it will have a major effect on debt and everything else that we take for granted.
Proposed regulatory changes. I mean, it seems to me, and please enlighten us, it seems like it went from under-regulation to potential over-regulation to a need to get to that, some sort of a sweet spot, which is where I guess it's hopefully going to end up. But tell us what your thoughts are on that and what the effects are.
Yeah, I think the word regulation is a misnomer. The fact of the matter, there are certain industries that need to be regulated. They need to be regulated, in particular, one that is effective for the real estate business is banking. Banking needs to be regulated because it's not their money. Banks use your money, my money, his money. And because of that, they have a greater responsibility in order to protect that money. So it needs regulation. The key is that you don't over-regulate. You don't put regulations in to such an extent that they can't operate it as a business. When we closed the savings and loan, I closed one out of every, probably less than 4 in the country. I closed, as you know, over 1,940 banks in 5 years. It was the largest single expense of the United States government other than a war. It cost $430 billion. 13,000 employees. Many of the people in this room, I'm sure, bought real estate from the Resolution Trust Corporation. The key was not to get our money back. The key was to get the banking industry back into a safe form. The savings and loan industry went crazy. They established their own rules. We changed all the rules. As you probably know, one of the things I did was I refused to see anyone who was an elected official, whether they be in Congress, as a senator or a member of the House. Why? Because after I saw the first 20 who all wanted favors, not to close their friend's bank, I decided, I met with the president, and I said, I will not see any elected member of Congress. And if you want me to continue in this job, I can do it, but I'm not going to do any favors. And that's why we closed so many banks. And that's why we put so many bankers in jail.
That's why it's probably bipartisan respect for you as well.
It had nothing to do with politics. I could tell you, Republican or Democrat, it didn't make a damn bit of difference. If they ran the bank improperly, illegally, we put them in jail and we closed the bank. If they didn't have enough equity in the bank, How would you have a bank that we went into in California that had $500 million in deposit? We went in and found less than $1 million in cash in the drawer on a Friday afternoon. Where was it? It was stolen. We put 7 people in jail on that bank. But the key was to put the banking industry back into where it belonged, because it's directly related to what the strength of America is all about. This country was built on capital. Capital is a very strong part. You can't have capital unless it's available. So the availability has to be controlled by good rules and regulations so that they don't do a dishonest job.
Let me ask you this. So let's compare the RTC days and what the goal was and what you sought to and actually accomplished with regard to getting the banking industry back. And now we've got I wouldn't say similar, but how is it different today? And what needs to happen so there's a similar effect of putting it back into a healthy state?
Well, I think it's a lot different. I can tell you that the Resolution Trust was a much easier problem to resolve than the problems with the banking industry today. And that's because of participation. When we went into a bank and took it over, their loans was their bank. Today, participation in loans is beyond anyone's understanding. It's there are 50, 75, 80 banks that have a part of a deal. So it's a much more complicated process. But that doesn't mean you can't control the banking industry. You can control it. There are good rules that could and should be put into effect. Rules controlled by the Federal Reserve Bank, which has other responsibilities, such as debt, controlling the cost of money. That's an important part of the economy. There's differences of opinions as to whether or not low income is good for business or not. A low cost of money, I'm sorry.
No politics. Be careful, Stanley. No politics.
Pardon?
No politics.
No politics. I'm not going to get involved in the politics. We're talking about the economy. What made America the greatest country in the world are 2 things. It's freedom, which everyone takes for granted and enjoys, and capital. That's what set America apart. You could talk about a large number of other things, but they're unimportant. In the total picture, that's what made America great. The things we take for granted in this country are all at risk. And they're at risk for a continuation of the free enterprise system. Because that essentially is what made the real estate industry great, and it made this country great. And if you destroy that entity, you will destroy this country as you and I know it today, because it won't exist.
We avoided the fiscal cliff in the short term, at least. What policies in Washington? What are the policies in Washington that are going to have an impact on the real estate markets, in your opinion?
Oh, they will. I mean, there's no question that the real estate market is directly related to the rules and regulations that are put into effect in Washington. Cost of money, which is done by Washington, if you will, the Federal Reserve Bank. There's a variety of different opinions whether the manner in which it's been done is right or wrong. I personally think low rate of interest was the biggest mistake this country ever made.
Why?
Because there's no incentive for the banks to lend the money. Because banks make money with high rates of interest. High rates doesn't have to be high in the term of comparison. In the term of comparison, if you're lending money now at less than 1% interest, which is what the window is today, that's a low rate. If you lend it at 5% or 6%, that's a much higher rate, but yet livable. So when you have very inexpensive money, it's okay to use it gingerly as a stimulus, but it can't be a way to do business. And that's what has happened. The head of the Federal Reserve Bank and I don't get along. We don't agree. I have a much different opinion on Mr. Bernanke's theory of low income on as a total basis, where the cost of money is now less than 1%. And that's going to have a big effect locally on the real estate market in the short term. You're going to find the housing market in particular to have a regrowth in this year and maybe even the next year, depending upon other things like debt. But assumptions are that because of the availability of a huge amount of capital and the requirement that a large amount of that capital be used for betterment, meaning a resurgence back of the single-family housing business, and I think you're going to see it this year. But I don't think it's going to last unless this overall picture that is going to be necessary to be controlled, primarily the word debt, you're going to hear it from me over and over. I believe that the debt has to be under control. And now you're finding more and more real economists, book economists, are in agreement with that. Interest rates should be higher at the window. Banks should not be able to borrow money from the Federal Reserve at less than 1% money. Because what they do when money is so inexpensive, they don't lend it to the guy who wants to buy a $100,000 house. They lend it to high-risk deals, and they make 9 and 10% on their money. That's why there's no money. There's more damn capital in America today than ever in the history of this country, in real dollars. But why should the banks lend it when they can lend it at 10% and have the risk, because the cost of money is so low, the risk of losing it is minimal. And that's one of the problems with the banking industry today. The other problem is that we have, the people have a lack of experience in Washington to a greater extent than ever in the history of this country in knowing what economy is and knowing how to run a government. It's not a business-oriented government.
What are the tools that the government has? What do we do to curb inflation? Let me back up. How does it, very simply, inflation play out and affect real estate? And then secondarily, what are the tools in the tool chest?
Inflation is directly related to debt. If we don't control the debt, you're going to have massive inflation in this country because the value of the dollar keeps going down. The value of the dollar in America today is substantially less than it was a year ago. And we didn't have major inflation, but you're having inflation today. It's probably somewhere in the real marketplace of around 7%, because in the manner in which it's figured in on the reporting basis, you don't get all of the things that cost money. But if you ask your wives, what the men who have eyes, or the women in this room, what it costs you to go in a grocery and buying bread and milk, and everything's more money. Not in real big terms, but it's a lot more money. Milk has gone up 40, 50 cents a quart in the past year. So there's all kinds of increases in cost. And that's because the dollar is lower in value than it should be. And that's a controlled environment. By doing what they are doing with the Federal Reserve Bank, by Mr. Bernanke's theory that low money is the proper way to control the stimulation for business, it did. It worked. At least it worked partially, but it should be eliminated. There's nothing wrong. Listen, one of the reasons you're going to have a big surge in housing is because all this money is now available. There are people who are refinancing their houses that had 6% mortgages and now buying them at 2.5%. I just refinanced an apartment. It's an expensive apartment. I've got $1 million mortgage. I'm paying 2.56% interest for 8 years fixed. 8 years fixed. I could arbitrage that money and go out on the federal and buy bonds, tax-free bonds, even at 3% and make money. That's crazy. The economy, they just don't understand. They, meaning a large number of people, just don't understand how debt and the economy are interrelated, and the cost of money is one of the very much key factors to control the growth of this country. And
It's not like you haven't had an opportunity to share
listen,
that.
I've been in the banking business all my life. I've owned banks. You know, I became involved in the Resolution Trust Corporation because a president asked me to help write FIREA, which was the underlying legislation that formed the Resolution Trust Corporation. That was Father Bush. When George W. became the president, he asked me to run it because he knew I was in the banking business, and he knew I believed in the economy of real estate. Real estate is a big business. It's a good business. I've made my money's in the real estate business. I've built everything you can imagine. My license number in the state of Florida is 13. My son, who's a graduate engineer, who's 61 years old, is the chairman of the state of Florida General Contractors Licensing Board. His license number is 300,000 and something. So I could tell you that there's no greater industry than the real estate industry. I made my success on a financial basis in the banking industry and in the real estate business.
I'll point out, this is not really a question, but I'll point out what's blown me away. He doesn't talk about this that often, but I'm going to say it and lay it out there. Presidents of countries, he's been flown on Air Force One for private meetings to figure out how to handle things in different countries. Presidents of countries in Europe, addressing the Knesset in Israel on economic, real estate, and banking issues. Parliament in London, addressing them. Private meetings with people in the Federal Reserve, even those that he disagrees with, they still want to hear and get his input. So, if you want to share one, go for it. You probably won't, but it'd be interesting for the crew here to hear what you have. You know, some of those high-level, interesting, double-secret meetings that you've been in, Stanley. Having said that, let's get down to the state level. What can the state government do to accelerate growth over the next 5 years? On a state level?
Well, there's a lot of things they can do. One of the problems that the states are going to be facing relatively soon is the Obamacare program. While I think there's a large number of things in that program that's good, in the long term, I could tell you it will bankrupt the country. It can't be done. Impossible. 2,700 pages. I've read over 1,000 pages of that act. It's beyond my understanding. But I can tell you, the cost of that, if it was ever implemented in its entirety, would bankrupt the country. Can't be done. That has nothing to do with whether or not it's a good program or a bad program. It has to do with whether you can afford it. Can't be done. Even the implementation of the program is going to have a major effect on the quality of medical care in this country. You're going to see less doctors, and you're going to see worse care of patients. It's just as simple as that.
What about education or regulatory enforcement or banking industry controls at a local level? What can the state, local level governments do?
Well, I was able to convince the governor of Florida to prevent any increases in tuition. And this year, as you know, the governor of the state of Florida said, I'm not going to allow any increases in tuition. I wrote the Florida prepaid college program. I don't know how many of you are involved in here, but I'm sure there are some, where your children or your grandchildren have a prepaid college program. The Florida prepaid college program is the largest program of its kind in the country. Our assets today are believe it or not, $10 billion, $700 million in U.S. government bonds. That's our only asset. I wouldn't buy stocks or bonds. I'm the trustee. The state tried to borrow $2.5 billion. I wouldn't sign the check. They took me to court. They lost in the Supreme Court of the state of Florida because the court ruled, I pled the case, the court ruled the money didn't belong to the state. It belonged to the kids who were covered under the program. It was a disaster for them. They couldn't balance their budget. Education is the key to making America a great country. I was in India recently. I stayed with the Prime Minister in New Delhi. I flew there on Air Force One, and I was with the Prime Minister for a long time. I helped write the nuclear treaty with Condoleezza Rice. She flew over with me. There's some funny stories to say. They were playing the Star Spangled Banner, and I said to Condi, I said, what should I do when I get off the plane? She said, just wave like that. They'll think you're the president. It's a true story. It really is. It was really funny. She's a remarkable woman, by the way, for those of you who don't know. She's one of the most brilliant women I've ever met. But I could tell you, this country has got an unbelievable opportunity to be as great as it ever did, but it's got to recognize its responsibility. Responsibility is a big word in the world of countries today and in the world of politics today. And I don't want to get involved in the political issues, but there are significant political issues that faces America today on a national and international basis. And they have to be part of this overall thought process, if you will, to bring about the change. The real estate industry is the backbone of America. It really is, if it's controlled and it's done right. There's a huge amount of profit to be made by the people who build it. I've built 13,000 homes or more. I've probably developed 50 shopping centers all over the world. I built hospitals in Europe. I built in Germany. I built in Switzerland. I built in Sweden. We built all over. There's great opportunity in the building business because there's a great need for the finished product. But you got to understand the relationship between financial commitment and the product. And there is a relationship. And there's no better industry because it's meaningful. It produces something that's needed. It's called homes, apartments, businesses, offices, all the things that made developers into a satisfactory profession.
This is an important question. What sectors of the real estate market do you think are in the best position for growth? Let's first start short term.
I think the short term is the housing market without any doubt. I think you're going to see a big surge into the single-family housing market in new product. And that's because certain controls are put into effect that there's been a shortage of even the foreclosed houses. They're being controlled as to the numbers that the banks are going to be allowed to put back into the marketplace. There's got to be a resurge back into the banking industry that gets smaller banks back into the banking business, because smaller banks in small communities understand the needs of their constituents far better than the bigger bank. There's a big trend in America to reduce the smaller banks and eliminate them. Let them be bought by the bigger bank. Biggest mistake this country could do, in my personal opinion.
Is it a control issue?
Yes, it's a control issue.
Why?
Because you can't put the kinds of controls in everything, and that's what our present administration is doing. We're making so many controls that the cost of producing a product, whatever the product is becoming more expensive than the product is worth. And it also lends itself to an inflationary thing, and the debt has a relationship to it. It's all related to each other. I think, personally, there are some very serious issues as it relates to the United States and as it relates to the free enterprise system. I believe in America. I was born here. I lived all my life here. I've lived in Florida all my life. There isn't a greater place in the world. The reason we have 13 million illegal immigrants here is so simple. They all want to come to America for one big reason: the opportunity to make a better living, the opportunity to have a better education, the opportunity to do the things we all take for granted as Americans. They're at risk today.
What are you investing your money in over the next
Well,
few
we
years?
bought last
Next
year-
few years, what are you buying? What
Last
are you
year
gonna
we
buy?
bought $650 million worth of product. We don't do mortgages.
The mic.
It felt okay. We don't use mortgages. We have a team of people who invest in our product, and they do. But there's nothing wrong with debt. I'm a firm believer in debt. I went into the building business as a laborer. I became a card-carrying carpenter in a union in Florida, which is a non-union state. I've been in this business for 65 years. I know the building business. I know how to cut a rafter. I really do know the business. It's a great business. There's great opportunity in America.
So are you buying shopping centers?
Not much anymore. I think there's going to be a major change in the manner in which shopping centers are now being developed. I don't think the strip center will be in existence for very much longer. I think you're going to see bigger stores and single stores rather than group stores. I think there's going to be some changes brought about by the Walmarts. We're building 2 Walmarts now. It's their new, Walmart has a new market store. It's called Walmart Supermarket. We just opened the first one in South Carolina. We built, it's 50,000 feet. It's a small store for Walmart. But they're going to build 3,000 of them in 5 years. Now they'll want to build them in shopping centers or move into centers. please don't misunderstand. I don't feel at all that existing centers are out of the touch with the reality of demand. There's going to be a change in the manner. They can't compete against a single Walmart, and they don't do it well anyway because of cost controls and the other things.
So you're buying multifamily, or what are you buying?
Multifamily, yeah, we bought a lot of multifamily, and we operate them. We think the multifamily is a major market in America, and it will continue to be a good market in America.
What about long-term?
I think it'll be good long-term. I think.
What about long-term investments? Like, generally long-term, what would you be investing in for the long term?
Well, it depends upon what your needs are for the financial market. I mean, if you're looking for yield, that's one type of return. It's a different kind of an investment than a product. I mean, we build office buildings. Your return is better if you build a better product. We think office buildings are still good in particular areas. I mean, Florida is a growth state. Believe me, when I was a kid growing up in Miami, it had 61,000 people living in Dade County. There's 2,750,000 people living there now. Florida's a growth state, not because we're such a great entrepreneur and business, it's because of the climate. In the Second World War, when most of the hotels in South Florida converted, they were all occupied by Army personnel. We had the largest navigation school in the country in Delray Beach, Florida. So most of the servicemen that came down here loved the weather.
Right.
That's the biggest draw to Florida.
Let me let's move to South Florida. South Florida has been obviously buoyed by international investment. What appeared to be a textbook example of oversupply, and got, the condos and everything just got eaten up by foreign demand. First question is, do you think that's going to continue? And when do you think that music will stop, if at all?
If there is a good immigration law put into place, and I believe there will be one, I really do, I believe you will have a continuation of demand by people who want to take advantage of the opportunities in America and to buy product in America and live here.
So you think the music's not going to stop? You think it will go on given a good immigration policy?
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with the politics that happen in this country and the debt and the other things that I've talked about. I don't want to keep repeating the same thing, but you have to have, in order to have a successful operation, you have to have a balance. The balance involves a lot more than just jobs for people. It involves houses. Houses involve furniture. It involves the things that people need when they buy a house. It's a growth factor. It will have a major effect on the economy of America short term now. I think that 2013 is going to be a good year for the real estate industry.
What about the rest of the state? How is the rest of the state going to stay competitive and take advantage of that? I mean, Florida's getting South Florida is getting the lion's share of that demand, the foreign demand. So what can the rest of the state be doing? I think we were talking about it. You were proud of what Jacksonville was doing. Right. And you went off on that. Why don't you share a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, it's simple. People in Florida have a greater recognition of growth than most of the other areas of the country because we witnessed it. It's lived in most of the people in this room's lifetime. You've been a part of the growth of Florida if you live here. I'm sure there are people here who don't, but the reasons for the growth in Florida are varied. It's not only the weather, that's a big reason, trust me. But cost of education. Up until recently, Florida had the lowest cost of education on a statewide basis of any state in the Union. What did that mean? It meant that people could get a college education for less money in Florida. The whole pre-K college program was designed for the low and moderate income family. I personally felt if Florida was going to be a major state in the economy market, they needed an educated population. That's why that program was written for that particular class. They represent 40% of the population of the state. Low income, moderate income families. So an education that's affordable becomes a very important factor of wanting to live here. But today, when I'm a trustee of a university, It has a law school. 40% of our law school graduated with debt of over $100,000 per student, and over 45% still don't have a job in a law office. That's not a great economy. That's a bad thing. So there's a lot of curative things that have to be put into place, and they can all be done.
So let's go to Jacksonville, because that was an example. I think what you said to me was education, which you covered, capitalize on the weather, which you covered.
Right.
And I think you said quality of life.
Yeah.
You know, what was that?
Quality of life is simple. It's just what it says. The quality of life is living in a community that understands the needs of its constituents, a better political system than certain places have now, a reduction in corruption. We're getting more and more corruption in the United States than has ever existed, and they're getting away with it. A decentralization of government. I think you've got to bring government back to the local area where the people are the beneficiaries of good government. I think congressional, we talked a little bit about Congress. People are now running for Congress as a living because the benefits are so great. You know, I'm not sure that's a good process. I think the commitment for good government, even the judiciary, the people who used to be the biggest and the best judges in this country was the retired attorney. That's exactly what it was. I was involved in the Judicial Qualifications Committee. I don't know if people know that. We try judges. That's all it does. It's a big group run by the state of Florida. I was on that board for 25 years. We have the authority to remove any sitting judge in the state of Florida from the Supreme Court on down. And it's a very good policing thing. What did it mean? It means it was a betterment for the operation of the judiciary. And it is. It works.
Question for you. I want to jealously protect 10 minutes of Q&A at the end, because someone may have a really interesting question for you. We're going to put up, just as a final thought, I think you touched on it a bit. Why do so many people want to live in the United States?
For all the reasons that you all know.
Why do they want to be here? What is it? What
you
is
know,
it about?
last year I traveled 300,000 miles. I'm 85 years old. That's a lot of miles, trust me. That's a lot of miles. Divided by 52 weeks and you can know it's a lot of miles. I've been in every country in the world. There is no place in the world that even comes close to America.
You like when you come home, you feel like you're home.
When I get off a plane in New York or Miami or wherever, from being out of the country, I'm glad to be in America. What we take for granted in this country is the luxury of the world. When I went to Russia recently, and I was there with a very big, he wanted me to see their new department store, and he wanted me to see the product that was in it. Yeah, they had great product. They had 9 cans of peas and 4 cans of apples. And go to a Publix market in Florida, you'll see 600 cans of peas and 400 cans of apples and all the other things that we take for granted. That's what made America great. And if we lose it, it'll be our own fault. We've got to understand what makes America good is all of you, me, and all of us who are the beneficiaries of a great country. We got to be involved. We got to understand what the risks are. We got to make sure that the politicians understand their responsibility to their constituents. Otherwise, it won't work.
Let's turn it out. Let's turn it out to the crowd. Any questions?
Do you think Florida's business climate and Florida as a whole is positioned to attract quality jobs, A, and B, are we producing the quality and the quantity of graduates to meet that demand?
I think Florida has done an outstanding job in doing what you just asked for that we need to do. However, that job has deteriorated immensely in the last 10 years. So I don't think we're continuing to do it at the same pace we did, or our goals are far less than they were. So I have a concern. Yeah, I have a concern for my grandchildren. So whether they're going to have the beneficial interests that I had as a kid. I'm not talking about making money. I'm not talking. There's great opportunity in this country, all over. I don't care where you come from. There's just it takes hard work. It takes a good education. It takes a commitment to be honest. You know, I've built maybe $20 billion worth of work. I have never been sued. Never. I've been in the building business for 65 years, and I've never been in a court where anyone filed a suit against me. People say, he's an honest guy. I get 50% of the work I do is on a shake of the hand. There's people who know me. I've worked for them in the past. I don't bid anything. I mean, they know I'm going to do it fair, and I'm going to do it right, or I'm not going to do it. That's what made America great, and that's what is going to keep the real estate industry great, and that's what the most important factor is. We need controls. We need to produce a better product. We need all the things that made America great. But we've got to understand what we want to accomplish. We want the freedoms. The freedoms that we take for granted in this country is the most important thing we have, because they don't exist anywhere else. You know, 3 years ago, I was in Iran on an Indian. I was representing a foreign country.
On an Indian passport?
On an Indian passport. I flew there on a fighter jet with a general in the Indian Army.
Were you flying it, or?
No, but I'm a pilot. I didn't fly that one. I am a pilot. And I'm jet rated. But no, this was a fighter plane. And we landed in Iran under an assumed name. I got out with my life because the guard found out there was someone there that was assumed, and they were looking for me. And, I was in the back seat of a car, on the floor of the car, running to Tehran at the airport, and we were at 60,000 feet in 2 hours from downtown Tehran, I can tell you. I've been all over. I'm telling you, there's no place like America. This is the most wonderful country in the world. But you got to be involved. You got to understand the responsibility of being an American. It's the opportunity. Someone says, are you in favor of immigrants? Of course, that's what made America. Immigration is okay, but we can't let them come in over the border arbitrarily. We've got to control all the things we have here.
Let's go another question. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry.
I'm sure that we all share your concern for the country about wanting to get our debt in order. We certainly need to do that. What are your thoughts on taking the easy way and just letting this sequester go into effect?
What are my thoughts? I'm sorry.
I didn't hear you.
Letting the sequester go into effect that's being debated in Congress.
Letting it, do you think it's
Fall off the
advisable to
cliff.
let the sequester go into effect, or how?
No.
How do you get rid of it?
Well, my personal opinion is it probably has a 50-50 chance of happening because of the politics that's involved. The realization of what should be done becomes less important than the politics that drive the answers, and I think that's a big mistake. America needs to be kept great. In order for America to be great, it's got to be involved in the world, in the politics of the world. We can't, the oceans are no longer the boundaries that protect America.
So what happens if we just let the sequester go into effect? What's going to happen?
Well,
let's say we got political, stalemate, and it happens. What's going to happen if that happens?
Well, I think you're going to see massive inflation. I think you're going to see a devaluation of the American dollar. And I think you're going to see either China.
Why, you're spending less though, aren't you?
Well, either China or, well, I don't think it'll happen. I really don't.
Well, I said no, that was the question. If it does happen, what's going to happen?
I'm telling you, what will happen is you'll see massive inflation, and you'll see a diminishment of the America as we know it. America will no longer be the most powerful nation in the world.
Why, because of the defense spending cuts?
There's all kinds of reasons. It has to do with armed forces. It has to do with religious aspects that are now becoming an important factor in the political world of the takeover. I mean, there's religions that want to really become involved in the operation of countries. When you have a religion that's representing of, and I'm not, this is not meant to be a criticism, it's just a fact. One religion has, not a religion we're familiar with, has a total population of 1,250,000,000 people. They have branches of them that really want to do more than just be religion. They want to take over countries. They want to run the operation. Is that what America wants? Can we prevent it? Well, if we don't prevent it, it's going to happen. So you got to have an understanding of really what's going on all over the world. I guess I'm more fortunate than most because I see it from the other side, be traveling, and I see what's going on. There's a major change in Europe that's happened in the last, I'll go far, 7 or 8 years, probably more so in the last 3 or 4. It's becoming a Far Eastern section of the world because of the huge immigration of different communities that have moved from the Middle East into Europe in the hundreds of thousands. And you see it, there's big changes.
One more question, or 2 more questions. Let's see what we can do. Yes, sir. Mr. Gibbs?
Mr. Tate, there are those that see the sequestration as an attempt to start cutting our spending and reducing our debt. What areas do you see, other than that, that we should start looking at to cut our debt? I mean, we all know that we need to do it. Somebody's got to be the first one to do it, and next week could be the beginning of it. But
It's kind of like change is great, you go first, right?
right.
Well, there are lots of analyses that have been made as to what debts can be reduced on a planned operational basis where it doesn't have any serious major effect by implementing the entire plan at one time. And I can give you the names of books that have been written by economists that are knowledgeable, that really know what the story is. The one consistent opinion is we can't let it continue or the disaster will be irreparable. There will be no way we will be able to cure it.
Give one good book, and what's one area that he's asking for?
Well, the area really is to cut on expenses. We have to reduce.
What are the big ticket items that wouldn't be too painful? And
Well, healthcare is going to be one of them. Healthcare is reaching the point where it's unaffordable.
what
And
about
it
the
has-
book? What book? What book would you recommend?
Oh, there's all
Name
kinds
one
of-
good one that really stands out.
If anyone wants a book, I'll give them the name. I don't think I should advertise
Okay.
books here. I'll give them names of books. But there's opportunities of experience, right? of involvement. And you don't have to be the smartest person in the world to understand the seriousness of the problem.
Any other questions? I'm going to leave you with one for the students in the room. Mr. Tate, what advice do you have for the students in the audience that are preparing to step out into the industry there?
I think for a student, the most important thing is to understand the value of education. It's the most valuable thing that they can have. And I believe that that education will prepare them better for dealing with what the world is coming to and what will be going on in the world. So students should remain in school. They should do all they can to make it. When I attended the University of Florida in 1944, it was an all-boys school. It had 2,000 students. My tuition was $100 a year. When I started the prepaid college program, it was $15 a month. This year it's going to be $460. 40% of the population can no longer buy a college contract. There's something wrong with that. There's a lot wrong with it. We're not allowing what made America great to be continued. And it's our problem. And it's a problem we have to recognize and cure. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a hardship for some, maybe a lot. But it's better than the alternative. I've seen the alternative. I've been in every country in the world. There is no place in the world, no place, that even comes close to any place in America.
When we were together last, at one point when we talked about this topic of the students and what they should focus on, you reminded me that you were CEO of a New York Stock Exchange company driving a pickup truck. Is that if I'm not mistaken? And I think you said it was important for them to learn the business and pay your dues, even if you got to take a pay cut at the beginning, right?
Right.
That was key. And plow down and drill down if you can, and work with someone that really knows their business and learn.
There's no greater opportunity than working for a company that knows what they're doing and are honest and are willing to teach you. And that's the greatest opportunity that we have in this country, second to none. There's no place in the world that has that kind of opportunity except America. So that's what we should do. That's what we should take advantage of, all of the things that are here in our backyard, our neighborhood, all the other things. And I thank you.
I'm
for
getting
letting
this.
me-
I'm getting
I
from the
know,
back.
I know.
I'm getting
I'm
the,
sorry. Yeah.
Well, thank you all
Anyway,
very
I
much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for letting me speak.